Obviously, the rest of the year. I know.
All is good.
I've been converting my
Hi, Miss Emily. Super. And the clock. Oh my God.
Thank you.
All right. I have places. I know I ran up there.
Good morning, supervisors, staff, and guests. Please sign in. All right, we got everybody.
Scott's absent, excused.
Scott Henschke, are you on?
No, he's excused, he's not going to be in.
All right, okay.
Okay, hold on.
Okay, then we have, all right, we have 17 present. We have 4 absent today, so we do have a quorum, and we will continue on. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance if you're able. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Need a motion to approve the agenda. I have a motion by Supervisor Diedrich and a second by Supervisor Voigt. There are no other considerations. Please vote your ballot.
Have to wait.
All right, we have 17 yes, 0 nay, 4 absent, so we do have a quorum. Moving on to approval of the minutes of March 21st, 2023. I have a motion, please. Motion by Supervisor Stier and a second by Supervisor Schwallenberg. Are there any corrections to the minutes? Seeing none, please vote. Right, we have 17 yes, 0 no, 0 abstain, and 4 absent, so they have been approved. Moving on to communications.
I have one communication from Judith Hartle regarding the sale of Delta products to minors.
All right, I'm going to refer that communication to Public Safety and Health and Human Services. Are there any other communications? All right. Public participation. Anything up there? Okay. All right, then we have special business today. Vance Forrest, Vice President of Risk Management Services with Aegis, will present a check to the Calumet County Board for the Calumet County Law Enforcement Project.
Good morning, I'm going to speak, but first, I'm going to introduce someone else. This is John Dirksey. I want John to say something. You're a near and dear county to us, and John will probably set the table a little bit why. I'll wrap up. It's going to be good news. What a way to start the day with a little bit of money coming back. John?
Thank you, Vance. My name is John Dirksey. I'm General Administrator of the Wisconsin County Mutual Insurance Corporation, and it was in 1987, November of 1987, that I stood upstairs in the old court boardroom and addressed the then-sitting Board of Directors, the Board of Supervisors, excuse me, to convince them to participate in a company that was owned by Wisconsin counties. Calumet joined 23 other counties at that time to form the Wisconsin County Mutual Insurance Corporation. And it's been estimated since 1988, our first year of operations, that we've saved Wisconsin's taxpayers over $100 million in premium savings over that period of time. In addition, the founding members wanted 4 other things: stable premiums. Our rates today are actually less than they were in 1988. Innovative and creative loss control and advisory services for safety and risk management services. Aggressive claims and litigation management. Again, we had 2.4 claims per rating unit in 1988. Today it's 0.65 claims per rating unit. So that reduction in losses has really created that stability and that pricing stability. So, we have been at the leading edge of coverage as well. In 2014, a little-known product became available called cyber liability. And the Board of Directors at that point said, listen, much of what we do is driven by computers today. Our connection to state government and all that our departments do is fueled by that technology. We'd better take a look at this. So in 2014, the Board of Directors approved a full cyber liability coverage to be added to the coverage program. Liability, property coverage now, workers' compensation, law enforcement liability, public officials, errors and omissions liability, and we added that cyber liability piece at no additional premium. That continues to this day, and that little product back then has become very, very, as anytime you hear anything in the news today about cyber events and ransomware and all the other things that are going on, it's become very, very, very important. There was one other program that is unique to the Wisconsin County Mutual, and that's the Owner Direct Insurance Program. And I'm going to step back now because the gentleman that coordinates that program just introduced me. I'm going to give him back the podium so he can explain to you what that program is. Thank you.
Thanks, John. My name is Vance Forrest, and I represent the County Mutual today. Chair Connors, good morning. Thank you for letting me be part of the agenda. Good morning to all the other supervisors here. I love it when a plan comes together. I wish I coined that phrase, but I didn't, but That's what we're here to talk about when a plan comes together. So the story for the ODIP starts in the summer of 2019, and I met a gentleman by the name of Todd Romanesco for the very first time and explained to him, with your construction project and needs on the imminent horizon, have you thought about an ODIP, which is the Owner Direct Insurance Program, and proceeded to explain it to him and Dan, the finance director at the time, and he thought it was a worthwhile adventure, and then I made him go to Madison, and we had to go meet our friends at the DWD, because when we do this, there are some obligations and rules that we have to abide by, and those are governed by the state. And so I got to meet Todd Romanesco, and he probably doesn't even recognize me now, because during the course of the project, I was here almost on a weekly basis for 2 years. I see Adam in the back of the room, got to meet some other staff in those 2.5 years of building your wonderful facility over there. So maybe if I put my hat on now, Todd will recognize. I'm Vance, remember? I'm Vance. So Todd used to get to see me. I would have that hat on, or usually a hard hat on, and my high-vis vest and my safety boots. And so that's what I would do. I'd come here on a weekly basis, work with the team on the construction phases. It took a while, and it's all really about safety, and that's what this big check is about. The role that I provide in the front end is putting all the moving parts together, including taking an owner's representative down to the state and saying, hey, we want to do this. And the permission that they give us is the permission to have divided coverage. So there's a rule in the state of Wisconsin that you're only allowed to have one workers' compensation policy. Doesn't matter if you're a county or a private industry, that's the rule. And the permission that we're getting from the state to do is to actually add another one. It's called divided coverage. And so every contractor that came on site was a client of ours, and we insured them for workers' compensation. And so our state is a little bit unique, and we all have to charge the same thing. What does that mean? We, the insurance company, have to, in the state of Wisconsin, charge the same thing for workers' compensation. So unlike your homeowner's insurance or your car insurance, where the rates could be all over, it depends upon who really likes you and who doesn't. Across the border in Illinois, it's called open rating. They can charge whatever. In our state, we all have to charge the same thing, we, the insurance companies. So what does that give us the opportunity to do? We can tell the contractors that wanted to build on your project on the front end, here is what we want. We want you to quantify the cost for your workers' compensation. And so that's basically driven by payroll. So how many man hours equals payroll, and we all have to use the same rates and charge the same thing. So on the front end of the project, we had them extract what the work comp costs would be for their guys to build a project, even if you didn't do an ODIP. That money was now in your pocket to buy the insurance from someone else, same cost, and that someone else is your insurance company. And so you are putting your insurance company, and I am actually your servant today. I am your employee. Alice sits on the board of directors, and so she's really, really my boss. And another person that I want to recognize, and maybe if Bill is watching the streaming of this, Bill Baraboo was also a board of directors member for the County Mutual, and I got to know Bill over the years, and hopefully he's here. He couldn't make it. We tried to get him here to take one final bow. But we went ahead and did this concept. So now that money that's been extracted by the contractors is in your pocket. You buy the insurance from us. We insure all those contractors. And if the project is safe, we give the money back. Guess what? It was pretty safe. So was it flawless? No, we've had some that are almost darn near flawless. We had one, Green Lake had a project that they built very similar to yours, and after 2 years of building theirs, we had one claim, and that was a worker that went to the dumpster to throw some refuse in the dumpster, and out comes a feral cat and bites him. That was the only claim that we had in the whole project. We had 7 claims. We did a pretty good, safe job on the project. After those claims are settled out in that, the remainder of the money then comes back to the county. So that's in a Cliff Notes version of how it works for an owner direct insurance program. My job, after all the moving parts are put together, is to come here and work with the team that built your project and put on my risk management hat and try to get everyone to pull the rope in the same direction and be safe and smart and all that. With that, I'm going to have Hunter Turbin go ahead and just stand up and give everybody a wave. Hunter is we have several of me. Hunter is the next me. He's the one that services and works with Calumet County and Michelle and the other department heads, and he wears the risk management safety hat. You constantly get our advice. We're a resource there for you for phone calls and weird things that are going on. But with that, I'm sure you're all in bated breath, and Dave's not here. Dave Mako, the finance director, but if he's ever heard this once, he's heard it 100 times. Checks in the mail, Dave. So I got the email yesterday, so did Alice got the email that the check indeed was cut yesterday and put in the mail. And without any further ado, it is a big check, and then the numbers on it also make it a big check. Alice and the board, could you guys use about $112,000?
Oh, yeah.
So it's actually $111,987.43. And this is back to you. So congratulations. Great working with you. Todd, it's been really great. Todd has really been a wonderful person, not only professionally to go ahead and get to meet, but I can call him a friend. We spent enough time together getting to know this, and we've had conversations that actually went off in various topics. I found that he's a globetrotter and found some of the stories he would share with me fascinating. So with that, Todd, it's really been a pleasure getting to know you through the course of the project. Adam, how's our roof? It's not leaking, is it? We're doing good? Well, obviously I got to get to know Adam. He sat in a lot of our project meetings. Thank you. Who wants to shake my hand and take a check?
You want to do that? Pete, from Public Safety.
Yeah, good idea.
Use this for your next collection.
And with the camera, you kind of just go ahead and boss us around. Where do you want us to stand?
By the flag.
By the flag?
I won't boss you.
No.
I may not let go.
Take one more left, okay?
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, okay. All right.
Thank you very much. You got it. All right, excellent.
Thank you very much. It's actually a very great occasion to always receive this money for things that are well done. And we certainly thank County Mutual and everybody involved. I enjoy being the board of directors, and I also make sure that Calumet County is not overlooked. So thank you much. Todd, did you want to say anything?
Well, I just wanted to point out, just for the board, I mean, another round of applause really for Vance. I mean, Vance coming here every week, keeping safety in the forefront, not only for the fact that we benefit with the check at the end, but ensuring that workers are safe, you know, free of injury. I was never really aware of the work that somebody like Vance does to keep workers safe on such a huge project. If you really think about all the moving parts and the cranes and the spancrete and all the possibilities of things that could happen, for him to be here, be on site, keeping that in the forefront is absolutely critical. So thanks, Vance, for doing that. Thanks for keeping us in the loop. It's been great, so I appreciate it.
Okay, moving on then. We'll hear from Harris Beyers from Stantec. He'll update the board on the work being done on some of the contaminated properties within Calumet County.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to come and share what I think is a fascinating story. A program that Mary Carell and now Jason, in combination with Mike in the Treasurer's Office and Stantec, really forming a unique and fascinating partnership to work together to try and take some of the former industrial commercial properties in Calumet County and move them toward a higher and better use. And it was done using a combination of state and federal grant dollars. So just from the early outset here, I want to set a stage. That's what sets your program separately from, say, some of your neighboring counties that self-fund their brownfields program. One of the biggest, I think, challenges we faced, and truly one of the things I like to brag about often is what the picture that I'm showing you here. And that's moving one of the more blighted properties forward in Calumet County, and that was the former Quinney Plating Facility, and we'll touch on that a little bit further in. But underlying all of this, the goal of your Brownfields program is to transform liabilities into assets in the community, and again, find that higher and best use of that site. I want to touch on 3 things this morning, just to keep this kind of tight and brief. I want to touch first on the results of a grant that was awarded to the county back in 2019, or EPA fiscal year 2018, and then I'll touch then on some continuing work specifically at Quinney Plating, and then end with, I think, what's a really bright horizon for you, and that's your last grant application that was submitted to EPA last fall. Touching first on sort of the top project, I want to set the stage and kind of define what a brownfield site is for those in the audience who maybe it's not an everyday term. You know, a brownfield site's codified in the federal code to sort of represent a piece of land, a piece of property that it's not in its highest and best use. And the reason it's not been redeveloped, expanded, useful in terms of an asset is because of the contamination that's either known or, in the case of perhaps Quinney Plating, perceived. And that's prevented the regular redevelopment market from moving forward on these projects. And so what EPA and the state realized is if grants can be made to local communities, the local communities who know these sites, who know the development community, can come in and move these projects forward. So what does a brownfield site look like? Just a couple of pictures. These are generic. These are not in Calumet County, but just to give you a flavor of the variety of these kinds of properties, and you probably see these on your daily drives. You know, it's former automotive repair shops. The picture in the bottom right-hand corner, and we see this time and again, a former dry cleaner, and if you look closely at the picture, the sign's even fallen down. You know, it's signs of blight. It's your community that drive by this every day, and these are constant reminders of perhaps a former prosperous time. And communities are kind of stuck with these pieces of land. You know, you look at the top left-hand corner, you know, former supermarkets, old school buildings, vacant lots, junkyards, scrap yards. You know, again, not the highest and best use when you think about community health and economic viability. One of the underlying principles, though, when you really think about, well, what does a brownfield site do to our community? I think this is very clearly illustrated, especially in Calumet County. One of the things that we did in your previous 2018 grant was we mapped the locations of potential brownfields, and from there, we can kind of look at, well, what is the impact of a brownfield site on the fair market value of a residential property? And it's quite depressed. So residential properties within 1,000 feet of a potential brownfield site are often 20 to 50% less in terms of an assessed value. And we see this same relationship played out in rural communities, in highly urbanized communities like Milwaukee, and even kind of mid-sized communities like Manitowoc, where these brownfield sites sort of have a radial impact, negative impact, frankly, on the community. And so again, the idea of the federal EPA brownfields program as well as state programs are to transform these brownfield sites back into a community asset. And in doing so, you reverse this trend, and now all of a sudden these residential properties that once were undervalued have a tremendous value. As part of our assessment work, we mapped, like I said, the location of potential brownfield sites. And if the county attempted to try and do some early due diligence, do some investigations, sample soil and groundwater on all the sites, you're looking at a potentially $108 million cost, which is unreasonable, right? And so EPA again set out during the first Bush administration a program that awards grant funding to local communities to do investigations on sites that are catalytic. The kind of sites that if you do just a little bit of work and you start that ball rolling, then the private development can happen. And that's what I'm going to share with you now are some of the kind of big accomplishments from the last grant that was awarded to the county. The grant was for $300,000. The grant itself had 3 different tasks. The first was to sort of identify and prioritize brownfield sites in the county. The second was to do what are referred to as Phase 1 environmental site assessments. If you're familiar with the real estate market, you know that's sort of the first step in the investigation to establish circle liability protection. And then number 3, which is going to, as a scientist, makes me kind of excited, is task number 3, doing the Phase 2, sampling soil, sampling groundwater, really quantifying the risk in a numerical sense so that a developer knows what they're moving into if they decide to buy and redevelop a brownfield site. And that's where we spent the vast majority of the funding, because to me that's really what makes projects go forward. In terms of kind of outputs. In other words, things that we spent money on, what are the tangible outputs? The first, and I think one of the most exciting ones, was mapping out old Sanborn maps. And so your planning department now has a wonderful library of Sanborn maps that have been stretched and wrapped to meet the current ground surface. For half a moment, the Sanborn Fire Insurance Company, starting in the late 19th century, would issue fire insurance to private and public entities. And the way that the insurance company would establish the premium, in other words, how much you would have to pay for your policy, the Sanborn Company would send representatives into local communities, and these cartographers would draw some of the most elegant and amazingly accurate depictions of land uses, specifically land uses that have a fire risk. For example, where the tanks are, where the chemical vats are, where the dry cleaners are. Well, back in the time when the fire insurance company was making these maps, the intent was to establish cost. Today, what an amazing, valuable crystal ball to look back into time and understand from today's perspective where the risk was back then. And so using your fire insurance maps, the one I'm showing you here is of Chilton. You can see Main Street, the railroad tracks, the Manitowoc River. And one of the sites that we ended up working on was kind of a former automotive site. But if you looked back into the record, in 1926, it was a bulk petroleum storage facility. And so it was really important when we were starting to design that phase 2 to know where to kind of sample for soil and groundwater, to know where these old tanks were. And again, this is a super rich history. So if anyone has interest, I'm sure your planning department would love to share these with you. It's a tremendous asset, and they're absolutely beautiful maps. The second thing was, of course, the soil and the groundwater sampling. And just to give you a flavor of the sites that we worked on, quite a few sites in Brillion, some in Chilton, down in New Holstein, the former New Cumsey site, with additional grant funding from a slightly different source, and then again, the Quinny plating over in Stockbridge. The intent was, with these initial dollars, again, reaching back to Mary Correll to acknowledge her role in trying to figure out where in Calumet investing a few federal dollars would make a project go forward. In terms of outputs, we were able to generate 7 phase 1s, 10 phase 2s, and 9 sort of supplemental remedial investigations. And from that, the idea is, what are your outcomes? How do you take your federal dollars and get substantial outcomes? So you met the requirement from EPA in terms of outputs, but your outcomes really are what I'm super proud about. Now, again, remember, this is with 0 county dollars. This is all grant funding that came in from the US EPA. You were able to leverage $2.1 million of private investment, meaning a brownfield site was purchased, there was some kind of investment into it, redevelopment, perhaps some restructuring, purchasing new equipment. And this is kind of on a voluntary basis, so oftentimes property owners are somewhat reluctant to tell us how much they invest, but we know at least $2.1 million. The second line, I think, really sets you apart from other communities in Wisconsin. So you took your $300,000 and pulled off little seed money and used that seed money to satisfy the match from the WEDC, the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation, to bring in 2 state grants. So now you get this idea of stacking. And you brought in about $270,000 worth of state grants, almost a 1-for-1 match, which is astronomical. I mean, no other communities go to this length to stretch your first grants. The last line is an estimated future leverage. There were a few projects that didn't quite get redeveloped in the time of your last grant. I'm guessing that value is about $1 million worth of work. So a grand total of about $3.3 million. So you took $300,000 of federal dollars and leveraged $3.3 million worth of investment back into the community. It's a return of about 10 to 1, which is, I think, is an outstanding return rate, especially for your first grant. Now, that return on investment, it excludes the Brillion Ironworks property. Your grant was used there. That's obviously under construction. There's a lot of investment happening on that site. So just kind of know, takeaway message, you had an exceedingly successful first grant from US EPA, and I think that sets you up for continued success now with Jason's role in economic development and Mike's role as the treasurer, really looking proactively at some of the other sites in the county. And that leads us to sort of where do you go next, and especially with Quinny Plating. It's a site that when I first walked through, I could tell, had a long history, and the county has been extremely proactive in taking that site from where it was, slighted, underutilized, and trying to get it to a point that it can become that community asset with a beautiful view over Lake Winnebago. I've shared this slide quite a few times, and it really helps understand, I think, the audience perspective of how you got to where we are today with this one particular site, because it's a beautiful case study about how brownfield redevelopment happens. When the site first sort of came to Mike's target and Mary Carell, when she was here, they set forward a plan to really protect the county's liability when it comes to acquiring these sites. Getting your phase ones done, getting your protection from the state through the DNR collaboration, figuring out those continuing obligations really set you forward to then securing funding. And that's really what sets this apart. I mean, if I'll just use a little cartoon of a money bag, you've had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and now 7 different sources of funding that went into this project. Now, granted, there were some cases, or there was a small amount of county funding that had to go into the site because of eligibility issues, but it was a pittance compared to how much federal and state dollars were able to be stacked because the county thought this plan through and moved forward with it. Just a quick layout of kind of where we are in this project, again, as an example. The county's done the acquisition. You obviously have demolished the site at this point. We've done the Phase 2 environmental site assessment, which is represented by the lovely drill rig there, and we're sort of to the stage where we need to do some additional work, some additional delineation to satisfy DNR's requirements. And that's where the last county board meeting, I understand you voted, and thank you, adopted a resolution to apply for that last round of funding, which should get the project across the finish line and have it ready for redevelopment. A couple of kind of top-level bullet points, what's left to do on the site. I'm showing you a drawing there, and that drawing represents all the sampling locations. So lots of little dots on the map. So why do we have to do more work? Well, there's some heavy metals that DNR identified in soil that they would just like some additional confirmation sampling and delineation sampling. Quite successfully, if you happen to live in the area and you're curious, groundwater has not been impacted at this site. Groundwater resources are not impacted. The drinking water aquifer, the regional deep drinking water aquifer below the Maquoketa Shale, not impacted at all. And that was one of the biggest concerns, I think, that the county had, that we had, that DNR had, is what does a plating facility like this one do to the drinking water aquifer? And in this case, again, as I mentioned earlier, it's perceived contamination. Just want to let that kind of sink in for a minute. It's the perceived contamination, because what we found out here was the aquifer has not been impacted. Soil largely has not been impacted either. There's just a few things, again, that DNR wants us to look at, and that's what we're going to start in May 2023. DNR is going to make some funding announcements. We anticipate funding being awarded to the county, about $75,000, which should be enough work to finish the investigation and be ready to work with the developer on any remedial action planning that the developer might need to do on this site. Lastly, and it will just pick up and kind of give you a sense of where I think your brownfields program is going to go in the future. The county last fall formed a coalition with Outagamie County, your next door neighbor, as well as a nonprofit organization to apply for a coalition assessment grant through US EPA. Again, what US EPA realized about 5 or 6 years ago is that they could continue to award $300,000, $400,000 to small communities around the country. But if those communities work with their neighboring community, there's a higher return on local investment. And it's played out across the country. And so that's the strategy that the county adopted last fall, again, working with Mary and Mary's counterparts in Outagamie County, to apply for funding from US EPA. And the grant request was $1 million. The vast majority of that funding would be used, again, to do site work on brownfield sites in Outagamie County and in Calumet County, in all the towns, villages, townships, as well as the tribal land in Outagamie County. There are a lot of brownfield sites. And I think the county, sort of, again, being proactive at no cost to the taxpayers in the county beyond our sort of collective federal taxes, is pursuing funding. And, we expect funding announcements in May. And then, Jason, it'll be up to you to kind of work in a collaborative mode with your counterparts over in Outagamie and work on how to split up this funding. Lots of examples, and I certainly look forward to working with you and Mike, and thank you for this opportunity. Can we open it for questions, or if not, please contact me anytime. I'm more than happy to answer questions. Sites.
Are there any questions of supervisors regarding the properties? All right, Supervisor Diedrich.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Harris, for that overview. It's obviously exciting and enlightening. The last slide you showed, going forward, you had Chilton and, I forget the other city, but you had like 200 some sites. What constitutes a site? Because a site, I'm thinking big, maybe a site's small.
Yeah, that's a great question. And you're exactly right, that was quick. I was concerned on time. So what I was showing you were the number of potential brownfield sites within the census tract that fell within a target area. So a census tract in Calumet County is a fairly large geographic piece of land, but to your underlying question, a potential brownfield site could be anything from a site that's known contamination or potential contamination. And that potential contamination could be due to the fact the site was once used as a gas station, but it's not today. But perhaps when it changed its use from gas station to maybe a residential site, an investigation wasn't done. And so it could be a small site, could be a big site. We're certainly happy to share. And, you know, communities sort of run the spectrum on how much of that type of information they're willing to disclose openly to the public. It's a sensitive kind of topic. What we did in our prioritization phase of this project, the initial 2019, we used a lot of federal and state databases and just brought them all together under a common GIS platform to look for those kind of sites. So it could be, again, a corner gas station, or it could be a large former industrial plating facility.
Supervisor Gleckner?
My mic is on now. Sorry. Wisconsin has a unusually large surplus, and they're working on a budget now. So, is this the matching funding that comes from the state of Wisconsin? Is that well funded in the current proposed budget?
I'd have to check. The source of funding, that's a fair question. I'm sorry, I don't know the state budget well enough, but what I can tell you is the WDC has one of the most effective brownfield programs, and what they fund oftentimes lead to multiple rounds of funding, as well as very high return on investment. It's a successful program. I anticipate it continuing to go forward. It's renewed every year with the state fiscal cycle. I hope it's funded. I truly do.
Thank you.
Supervisor Schwallenberg?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm not sure if the rest of the board realizes that this property was tax delinquent, if I'm right. And we became owners of the property, and that's how this process started, was in order for us to possibly sell the property, we had to fix it. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Schwallenberg. There are no other questions, so thank you, Harris. Appreciate your lecture. All right, moving on to resolutions. Resolution 2023-01.
Resolution amending the 2023 budget for the expenditure of American Rescue Plan Act funds.
Do I have a motion? I have a motion by Supervisor Stier and a second by Supervisor Gleckner. And Supervisor Gens, would you speak to this resolution, please?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Be glad to. It's been enlightening this morning as we've talked about cooperation between counties and municipalities, and that certainly has been brought to the forefront here in our prior discussions. This is no different. The American Rescue Plan Act funds, the amount that was allocated to the county was little over $9.7 million. And we've had discussions in the past recent months of projects that were approved after having talked with the municipality leaders in this county. There's been a lot of cooperation in terms of looking at funding, not only the 9.7 that we had, but the allocations that were made to all the rest of the municipalities in the county. Our folks have done an excellent job of interacting with our county partners in terms of looking at how can we do some joint things. Well, after all of that, you know, of that $9.7 million, we got about a little over $1.8 million that's been left to be allocated for projects in the county. This resolution deals with two projects. One of them, a play area in the city, in Nenning Park here in Chilton, made for particularly the ADM folks that need some special accommodations in order to be able to use facilities. We don't have an ADM compliant inclusive play area in the county yet. This would be the first in Nenning Park, and again, it's a cooperative effort between the City of Chilton, the Colby Foundation, and now proposing to have Calumet County involved with $100,000 of this money going for this project. Would be a tremendous addition to the county and to this Calumet County area. So that's one of the projects. The other project is to assist St. Vincent de Paul in serving residents in need by providing nearly $20,000 in essential support for food, rent, utilities, gas, and furnishings for folks who need that kind of help right now. And then the resolution also calls for us to adjust the budget accordingly to be able to obligate the $120,000 total of that ARPA funds. Thank you.
Are there any questions regarding this resolution? Supervisor Voigt?
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is not so much as a question as a statement. Having disabled children myself, I know how valuable these playgrounds are. My children aren't even physically disabled. We've been to a number of them in Allegheny County, and I think they're a tremendous asset to this, the city that they're in. It allows children that aren't usually able to play to be able to enjoy a park, and it's removes some anxiety for parents who are taking their children to these parks. So I strongly support this resolution, and that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Voigt. Supervisor Johnson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm just curious as to how do people find out or qualify for the assistance through St. Vincent de Paul? Do you have any information to that effect?
I'm going to have Mr. Romanesco answer that question.
So there's various things, Simeon, that would have individuals qualify for assistance through St. Vincent de Paul. Primarily, though, our utilization has been individuals that qualify or receive service through our Health and Human Services Department. They've been individuals, like kids that may be living in poverty that don't have a bed. St. Vincent would provide them with a bed. Or if it is for individuals that are struggling through poverty and are involved in our system through child protection, being able to get them established with a safe environment in a home and allow them to retain their children in their home. St. Vincent's been a part of that, in addition to food and those types of supplies.
Thank you. And then my other question was regarding the play area. Do we, I guess, have any information to the amount of families in this area that would be using that facility? I'm just thinking like, Appleton area, northern part of the county has a much larger population. Just curious, has there been any thought about future of doing something similar in that area or anything in that regard?
Good morning. And as far as your question, Mr. Johnson, I don't have the data on the exact number of residents that we would have in need, whether it's physical or cognitive. The nearest parks like this, and I think Mrs. Voigt alluded to Appleton, Memorial Park in Appleton is one of the closest facilities that could compare to this. And then if we go to the east, you're going to Shooty Park and Manitowoc would be the two facilities that would really offer this sort of opportunity to residents. So,
thank you.
Are there any other questions? If not, please vote your ballot. We have 17 yes, 0 nay, 0 abstain, 4 absent, so the resolution has been adopted. Moving on to resolution. Go ahead.
Resolution 2023-02, resolution prohibiting the use of private donations to administer elections, introduced by the Administrative Services Committee.
Right. I have a motion by Supervisor Diedrich and a second by Supervisor Stoffel. And Supervisor Gens, would you speak to this resolution?
Thank you. This resolution pertains to private donations that might be made to further the election process within municipalities. And this resolution says that we will not accept private donations to carry out the voting function within Calumet County. In the year 2020, in the general election there was a private non-profit entity that donated substantial amounts, $8.5 million to 5 Wisconsin cities and an additional $1.6 million to over 300 other Wisconsin municipalities. Calumet County was not one of them. We never have accepted the private donations to further the election process. We just didn't want that to be influencing in any way the process of voting here in this county. This resolution just supports that and just says we will not accept private donations to assist or fund the election process within Calumet County. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Gens. And Supervisor Booty?
Thank you very much. I just have a question as to the intent of our therefore be it resolved here. It states the Calumet County Board of Supervisors hereby prohibits the use of private donations from special interest groups, people, or other private entities by government for the purpose of election administration within Calumet County. Is the intent of that to apply strictly to Calumet County itself as it administers the elections here? Or is that supposed to also include all other sub-entities within Calumet County, meaning all cities, villages, townships? And if so, how would that work for those municipalities, City of Menasha, City of Appleton, City of Kaukauna, which straddle multiple counties? So I just would like some clarification upon that and how that is supposed to function. Thank you.
I guess I can start. So the intention, Matthew, was what was within our purview. So all we could control is what we're willing to say we're not going to accept. If they, as municipalities, were to accept those funds, that's something that we cannot control. We don't have the ability to prohibit them to do so.
Any other questions? There are no further questions, so would you please vote your ballot? We have 17 yes, 0 no, 0 abstain, 4 absent, so it's been passed by a majority of the vote. Moving on to supervisor reports. If anyone has any reports of meetings and seminars, please push your request to speak. I have 2 requests. Supervisor Schwallenberg.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As far as parks is concerned, the building at Ledgeview Nature Center will be closed on Sundays from now on. We have been open 7 days a week, but checking attendance and whatever, and other nature centers in the area and then in the valley are closed. Sometimes some of them are closed 2 days a week, so we will be closed on Sundays. We have a pet leash policy at our parks, but it's becoming abused as far as controlling pets and cleaning up after them, so our staff will become a little bit more strict as far as that's concerned. The policy is still in place. We have a new numbering system for our campsites at County Park, and this is due to the fact that we have added extra sites. So as of now, the old numbers are being published with the new to get the people used to it, because there are several sites that are considered favorite sites that people just automatically call in the number. So it will take time for them to get used to that. The cold storage building that we were building at County Park is done. Our cabins are still progressing. We're talking about possibly a July 4th opening for those. We will be developing new tent sites on the northern property. These will be walk-in sites. You will not be able to drive a vehicle in, but they also will have water, and I'm not sure if they'll have electricity too. There's a specific terminology according to the DNR as to what they're called. I'm not sure if they're primitive or not, but Health and Human Services, some of you may or not be, or may not be aware that we have a satellite office for Health and Human Services in Appleton on Oneida Street. It's been there for several years. We're looking at a possibility of purchasing a building, or actually looking for a new site, because for one thing, we've kind of outgrown it, and the property's got some problems with it right now too. Our year-end financial report is good again. We're returning money to the county again, and we've heard the possibility of finance looking at maybe developing reserve accounts or something to do with the fact that we're returning that money every year. Excuse me. We have our new report that we're supposed to bring those down for the annual report, and I mentioned it years before that this describes all the things that Health and Human Services does. It gets better every year. They had a contest, the staff did, with pictures that are in here, and it says who the pictures were done by and whatever. It's an amazing piece of work, and our staff really outdid themselves this year, as they do every year, and with the explanation of everything. The other thing is, several years ago, the state recommended that we do things regionally. So our ADRC, we are regional with Wapaka and Outagamie County. Wapaka has decided to withdraw from that agreement, and I believe Outagamie is too. So we will no longer be a regional facility. We will have to decide how to run our own with that. Yesterday, we had Student Government Day. We had Chilton High School, Brillion High School, Hilbert, and Kiel were here. We had over 40 students. It was run by our 4-H, Carlia, ran the program. They went over to the jail. We actually had more Legion members. This is sponsored by the Legion, and the auxiliary provides the lunch, than we've seen for a lot of years. And the Legion members I talked to, they were interested in the new jail. That's why they came, so they could go over and see that too. So the students toured that, plus the Emergency Operations Center. We went into the court with Judge Freilich, which was kind of, I don't know, too exciting for the kids. There were 3 cases. One was put off because he didn't have a public defender, and we heard about how there are very few public defenders around. One gentleman didn't even bother to show up for the case, so there was a bench warrant issued. And then one was, we saw how our video worked in the jail, because the prisoner was, instead of bringing him over to the jail, according to the judge, which creates security problems, and it was just a preliminary thing too. Sheriff Bull was here. He took the kids through the Sheriff's Department, I believe, and saw a video. They also met one of our dogs, the friendly one, here, and showed how he searched for drugs that was put in the room. The students I talked to were very pleased with what happened. This was a very quiet group. From all the years that we've had kids here, there were not too many questions that were asked. And then Carlia played a game with them, because they went to the treasurers, they went to get a marriage license, and they took them through all these those type of things while they were here. It was well received, I believe. So there was Human Services Day at the Capitol. I'm not going to let one of the other supervisors that went there speak to that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Supervisor Schwallenberg. Supervisor Voigt?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, Supervisor Schwallenberg did touch on one of the things I was going to talk about with ADRC, so I won't mention that, since she already did an excellent job explaining what's going on with Calumet, Outagamie, and Wapaka. However, we do have a great Wisconsin Aging Advocacy Day on May 9th, which I will be attending, and I will report back on that after that's over with. So thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Voigt. Supervisor Booty?
Thank you very much. Just wanted to make sure everyone is aware that this Friday, the Wisconsin County Association Transportation Steering Committee will be meeting. And on Thursday, May 4th, the Wisconsin County Highway Association will be holding its Northeast Regional Commissioners and Committee Members meetings. So if anyone has any questions regarding transportation that they would like me to pass along to the subject matter experts at those meetings, just reach out to me and let me know. Thanks.
And isn't this also National Highway Safety Week?
Yes, it is.
It is. And this is for motorists being very, very cautious as you pass workforce people in the highways, to be very, very cautious, be very careful, and drive safely. It was just a few years ago that we lost one of our highway workers due to a traffic mishap. So let's just be on our toes as we ride the highways, and certainly slow down, move over if it's possible, and avoid any hazardous things happening to our highway workers. We're all very, very conscious of the work they do, and when you see them, tell them they're doing a great job. All right, moving on then to the County Administrator report. Were there any questions? And if not, we have an appointment, the reappointment to the Veterans Service Commission of Pete Stier, whose term expired April 17th, 2023, and his new term will expire April 20th, 2026. And I need a motion to confirm. I have a motion by Supervisor Booty and a second by Supervisor Voigt to confirm that appointment. Are there any questions? Please vote your ballot. All right, we have 16 yes, 0 nay, 1 abstain, and 4 absent, so that has been approved. All right, our next regular meeting will be May 16th, and we will be meeting in the evening at 7 o'clock. So just keep that on your calendar that the time has changed. And now we'll be going into closed session to confer with legal counsel with respect to litigation in which it is likely to become involved, specifically to discuss the contract status regarding the Samuels Group. I have a motion by Supervisor Schwallenberg and a second by Supervisor Booty.
Thanks for using WebEx. Visit our website at www.webex.com.
To go into closed session, so please vote. Please vote on your ballot to do this. Ed, are you leaving?
He's going to come back. Yes.
All right. Where is he? He's to vote. We're in closed session, Ed.